Good day, my fellow future educators. I'm Joshua Baluyot of BPED 3B, and on behalf of the entire Group 2, I'll be the one to present our topic, Module 2 Target Setting. First, let's find out its learning outcomes or outcome. So, at the end of this video, you should be able to formulate appropriate learning objectives and outcomes that are constructively aligned with national standards. Let's start with standards-based assessment. So, what exactly is it? In education, it refers to systems of of instruction, assessment, grading, and academic reporting that are based on students demonstrating understanding or mastery of the knowledge and skills they are expected to learn as they progress through their education. So, in short, students must demonstrate grasp or master the knowledge and abilities they are expected to learn as they proceed through their education. So next is cognitive alignment. It is a design for teaching in which it is intended that students should learn and how they should express their learning is clearly stated before teaching takes place. Teaching is then designed to engage students in learning activities that optimize their chances of achieving those outcomes, and assessment tasks are designed to enable clear adjustments or judgments as to how well those outcomes have been attained. So, here is to learn and convey what they have learned, and pupils must first be taught. The teaching and assessment assignments are then structured to maximize students' chances of accomplishing these aims. Next, the framework of constructive alignment is represented in the university's recommended approach to unit design. So first, identify the intended learning outcomes. Second, design assessment tasks to measure attainment of the learning outcomes. Third, plan learning activities to enable students to develop the skills, knowledge, and understandings described in the intended learning outcomes and measured by assessment. And fourth, choose the content or topics, examples, resources, materials required to support the learning activities. So, in short, so students are asked to identify and plan learning activities that will enable them to develop the skills, knowledge, and understandings described in the intended learning outcomes and measured by assessment. Next, let's come to classroom assessment. Classroom assessment is an ongoing process of identifying, gathering, organizing, and interpreting quantitative and qualitative information about what learners know and can do. Here, teachers should employ classroom assessment methods that are consistent with curriculum standards. It is important for teachers to always inform learners about the objectives of the lesson so that the latter will aim to meet or even exceed the standards. The teacher provides immediate feedback to students about their learning progress. Classroom assessment also measures the achievement of competencies by the learners. In a nutshell, classroom assessments is the observation, gathering, analyzing, and interpretation of data to draw conclusion and inform decision making. Next, these are two types of there are two types of classroom assessment, namely formative and summative. So first, informative. Formative assessment may be seen as assessment for learning, so teachers can make adjustments in their instruction. It is also assessments as learning, wherein students reflect on their own progress. Formative assessment may be given at any time during the teaching and learning process. It is also a way to check the effectiveness of instruction. On the other hand, summative assessment may be seen as assessment of learning, which occurs at the end of a particular unit. This form of assessment usually occurs toward the end of a period of learning in order to describe the standard reached by the learner. And summative assessment measures whether learners have met the content and performance standards. Teachers must use methods to measure student learning that have been deliberately designed to assess how well students have learned and are able to apply their learning in different contexts. What is assessed in the classroom? So, assessment in the classroom is aimed at helping students perform well in relation to the learning standards. Learning standards com- comprise content standards, performance standards, and learning competencies that are outlined in the curriculum. Content standards identify and set the essential knowledge and understanding that should be learned. They cover a specified scope of sequential topics within each learning strand, domain, theme, or component. Content standards answer the question, what should the learners know? Next is performance standards. It describes the abilities and skills that learners are expected to demonstrate in relation to the content standards and integration of 21st century skills. The integration of knowledge, understanding, and skills is expressed through creation, innovation, and adding value to products or performance during independent work or in collaboration with others. Performance standards answer the following questions. First, what can learners do with what they know? Second, how well must learners do their work? Third, how well do learners use their learning or understanding in different situations? Fourth, how do learners apply their learning or understanding in real life contexts? And fifth, what tools and measures should learners use to demonstrate what they know? And last, the learning competencies. It refers to the knowledge, understanding, skills, and attitudes that students need to demonstrate in every lesson and or learning activity. How are learners assessed in the classroom? So, learners are assessed in the classroom through various processes and measures appropriate to and congruent with learning and competencies defined in the K-12 curriculum. Some of these processes and measures may be used for both formative and summative assessment, which have different goals. Learners may be assessed individually or collaboratively. Individual and collaborative formative assessment. In individual formative assessment, it enables the learner to demonstrate independently what has been learned or mastered through a range of activities such as check-up, quizzes, written exercises, performances, models, and even electronic presentations. However, in collaborative formative assessment peer assessment, it allows students to support each other's learning. Discussions, role-playing, games, and other group activities may also be used as performance-based formative assessment wherein learners support and extend each other's learning. Formative assessment in different parts of the lesson. So, formative assessment may be integrated in all parts of the lesson. Basically, every lesson has three parts: before the lesson proper, and after the lesson. Formative assessment conducted in each part serves a different purpose. In before the lesson, formative assessment conducted informs the teacher about the student's understanding of a lesson or topic before direct instruction. It helps teachers understand where the students stand in terms of conceptual understanding and application. Formative assessment provides basis for making instructional decisions such as moving on to a new lesson or clarifying prerequisite understanding. However, during the lesson proper, formative assessment conducted during the lesson proper informs teachers of the progress of the students in relation to the development of the learning competencies. It also helps the teacher determine whether instructional strategies are effective. The results of formative assessment given at this time may be compared with the results of formative assessment given before the lesson to establish if conceptual understanding and application have improved. On this basis, the teacher can make decisions on whether to review, reteach, remediate, or enrich lessons and subsequently when to move on to the next lesson. And lastly, after the lesson. Formative assessment conducted after the lesson assesses whether learning objectives were achieved. It also allows the teacher to evaluate the effectiveness of instruction. Students who require remediation and or enrichment should be helped by the teacher using appropriate teaching strategies. Summative assessment. This form of assessment measures the different ways learners use and apply all relevant knowledge, understanding, and skills. It must be spaced properly over the quarter. It is usually conducted after a unit of work and or at the end of an entire quarter to determine how well learners can demonstrate content knowledge and competencies articulated in the learning standards. Learners synthesize their knowledge, understanding, and skills during summative assessments. The results of these assessments are used as basis for computing grades. Individual and collaborative summative assessment. Learners may be assessed individually through unit tests and quarterly assessment. Collaboratively, learners may participate in group activities in which they cooperate to produce evidence of their learning. The process of creating a learning project is given more weight or importance than the product itself. Components of summative assessment. So, summative assessment are classified into three components, namely written work, performance tasks, and quarterly assessment. These three will be the basis for grading. The nature of the learning area defines the way these three components are assessed. In written work, component ensures that students are able to express skills and concepts in written form. Written work, which may include long quizzes and unit or long tests, helps strengthen test taking skills among the learners. It is strongly recommended that items in long quizzes or tests be distributed across the cognitive process dimensions so that all are adequately covered. Through this, learners are able to practice and prepare for quarterly assessment and other standardized assessments. Other written work may include essays, written reports, and other written output. However, in performance task, the performance task component allows learners to show what they know and are able to do in diverse ways. They may create or innovate products or do performance-based tasks. Performance-based tasks may include skills, demonstration, group presentations, oral work, multimedia presentations, and research projects. It is important to note that written output may also be considered as performance tasks. So what are we doing now is an example of performance task. And lastly, quarterly assessment. This measures student learning at the end of the quarter. This may be in the form of objective tests, performance-based assessment, or a combination thereof.
Okay, so our next topic is appropriate targets. Appropriate targets are written from the student's point of view and represent what both the teachers and the students are aiming for during the lesson. It also includes a performance of understanding or learning experience that provides evidence to answer the questions: what do students understand and what are they able to do? Next is what is meant by SMART objectives. SMART is an acronym that is used to guide the development of measurable goals. Each objectives should be: S for specific, M for measurable, A for attainable, R for realistic, T for time bounded. What is meant by specific? Specific describes the result of the work to be done. The description is written in such a way that anyone reading the objectives will most likely interpret it the same way to ensure that an objective is specific, to make sure that the way it is described is observable. Observable, that means somebody can see or learn, physically observe, or someone doing something. And next is measurable. What is meant by measurable? Measurable defines the objectives using accessible terms. It refers to the extent to which something can be evaluated against some standards. An objectives with the quality measurements uses terms of amount, percentage, or etc. A frequency measurements could be daily, weekly, or one-entry quality measurements would describe a requirement in terms of accuracy format within the guidelines. Next is attainable. Attainable is items should be included in the SMART objectives because they will be a factor in the achievement. Next is realistic. Realistic. It answers the question, should it be done? Why? What will be the impact? Is it applicable in real life situation? And lastly, time bounded. It refers to the fact that an objective has an end points and checkpoints built into it. Bloom's taxonomy is a set of 3 hierarchical models used to classify educational learning objectives into level of complexity and specificity. The 3 lists over the learning objectives is cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. Below is the illustration that describe the 3 domains of learning under Bloom's taxonomy. First, we have cognitive, which means knowledge and its goal is to think. Second is affective, which means attitude and its goal is to feel. Lastly, the psychomotor, which means skill and its goal is to do. Learners' ability to process information in a meaningful way under cognitive are categories: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. Under effective, we have categories: receiving, responding, valuing, organizing, characterizing. And in psychomotor, we have perception, set, guided response, mechanism, complex over response, adaptation, and organization. Benjamin Bloom. He is an American educational psychologist. Born in February 21, 1913, Bloom demonstrated the student's environment fostered in the student's potential. Bloom developed Bloom's taxonomy, which classified different learning objectives that educators can set for students. In 1956, he developed his taxonomy with his collaborators. Bloom's taxonomy is a pullback that the teachers or students can use to classify and organize learning objectives. This framework has been applied to the generation of K-12 teachers and college instructors in their teaching. It consists of 6 major categories: the knowledge, comprehension, application analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. The categories of the knowledge were presented as skills and abilities. With understanding, the knowledge was the necessary condition for putting these skills and abilities into practice, while each category contained strategies, all lying along a continuum from simple to complex and concrete to abstract. The taxonomy is popularly remembered according to the 6 main categories. We have first the knowledge, remembering or retrieving previous learning materials. And the comprehension, it is the ability to grasp or to construct meaning from materials. Next is the application, the ability to use learned materials or to implement materials in new and concrete situations. Next is the analysis, the ability to break down and distinguish the part of materials into its components so that its organizational structure may be better understood. Next is the synthesis. It's the ability to put parts together to form a coherent or unique new whole. Lastly, the evaluation. It is the ability to judge, check, and even critique the value of materials for a given purpose. And let's proceed to the revision of taxonomy by Anderson and Cratwells. 45 years later, the original taxonomy was revised by Lauren Anderson and David Cratwell. What are the divisions that both Anderson and Cratwell made to the original taxonomy? The original taxonomy, the knowledge category embodied both noun and verb aspect. The categories was renamed and were changed to verb from to fit the objectives. It changes from knowledge to remember. On the first level, we learn to remember. They're just rote memorization and recollection of facts without much understanding. For example, we learned about lemons. We want to remember the name, shape, color, size, and that they are sour. Once we memorize these essentially meaningless facts, we move to the second meaning level of learning. And next is the understand. On level 2, we learn to understand. We begin to decode information and learn that the lemon is yellow, what is ripe to eat, and if we take a bite, it is really super sour. We also understand that lemons loves sunshine and they contain lot of vitamin C, which is great natural oxidant that keeps us healthy. Now as we really know the lemon, we can work with it. And the next level is apply. We apply what we know. We've understood that while lemons are sour, they are also a great provider of vitamin C. To apply this knowledge in a meaningful way, we could boil the lemon into the hot water and add some honey. Then serve this hot lemon to our sick sister who needs a treatment. And the next level is analyze. This involved the examining and breaking down information into components, determining how the parts relate to one another and finding evidence to support the generalization. We studied the lemon flesh, examined the levels, and look at the levels of vitamins. We conclude that we can eat everything inside, while the sling tasted better and contains traces toxic pesticides. It ought not to be consumed. Next level is the evaluate. Now we are ready to evaluate. We analyze, critique, and compare. To evaluate our as the good source of vitamin, we compare it to the other sources such as oranges and supplements. We look for the following properties: vitamin level, affordability, taste, and packaging waste. If we evaluate of thoughts, we learn where the lemons score high and where others score higher. And lastly, on the Bloom's under the revision of taxonomy is create. Now, after we have learned, we understood, applied, analyzed, and evaluate, we are ready to create. As we know, lemon and also in comparison to similar things, we can formulate a plan to create our own good name. It's now easy to can come up with a cute shop design, sweet lemonade, and a good slogan, good, healthy, and yummy. Both original and revised became a very important tool to assess the outcome of the instruction, which up until now are used as a basis many educators. It is the tools that helps to measure the tips and the gaps of the students to the lesson that was discussed. It helps the teacher assess if the teaching and learning process was successfully and effective executed. So, here are the illustrations that shows the revision of Bloom's taxonomy and Anderson and Cratwell's revision taxonomy. The term was changed from knowledge to remember, from comprehension to understand, from application to apply, from analysis to analyze, from synthesis to evaluate, and from evaluation to create. The last topic is the Solow taxonomy, Biggs and Collins, 1982. Develop the Solow, or the structure of observed learning outcomes, Taxonomy as a systematic way of describing how the learner's performance grows in complexity when mastering tasks. Performance level of learners range from the lower end to the higher end. Solo. Pre-structural level, the student does not have any kind of understanding, uses irrelevant information and or misses the point of altogether. Solo 2. Unistructural level, the students can deal with one single aspect and make obvious connection. The student can use terminology, recite, perform single instruction algorithms, paraphrase, identify, name, or count. Next is the Solo 3. Multi-structural level, the student can deal with the several aspects, but this disconnected, he or she is able to enumerate, describe, classify, combine, apply methods, structure, execute procedure, etc. Next is Solo 4. Relational level, they may understand several relations between several aspects and how they might fit together to form a whole. The understanding format structure may thus have the competence to compare, relate, analyze, explain theory, explain in terms of cause and effects. Last is the Solo 5. Extended abstract level students may generalize structure beyond what was given, may receive structure in many different perspectives and transfer ideas to another areas. He or she may have competences to generalize, hypothesis, criticize, or theorize.
So let's proceed now to unpacking learning competences. Unpacking is the process of deconstructing student learning outcomes into component parts, competences to identify key lifelong transferable learning skills and the types of learning experiences, activities, tasks, and assessments that align with those outcomes. So here is the example of unpacking. We have grade 6 reading standard for literature, Common Core Standard 2. Next, we have determine a theme or central idea of a text and how it is conveyed through particular details, provide a summary of the text distinct from personal opinions or judgments. Next, we have learning target 1. Determine the central idea of a text and how it is conveyed through particular details. Learning target 2. Precede the summary of the text distinct from personal opinions or judgments. Next, we have now the ABCD of the statement of objectives. So we have Robert Major argued that learning objectives should be specific, measurable objectives that both guide instructors and students in the learning process. Major's ABCD model for learning objectives include 4 elements. We have the A for actor, B for behavior, C for condition, and D for degree. Next, we have the definition of the ABCD. First, actor. Objective may refers to the actor in the general terms such as the learner. This is the who of your objectives. Behavior. This should be an observable behavior even if actual behavior is convey or mental in nature. Next, we have the condition. It answers the questions under what circumstances or context will be learning occur. And last, we have the degree. Degree, it answers the question how much. Next, the outcome statements or objectives play an important role in helping students learn. They orient the student to the learning task and specify what students should pay attention to. They also help to focus the teacher to the goal of instruction, the central purpose, which is learning for the students or learners. Outcome statement can be broad or comprehensive in scope, or sometimes called program outcomes or objectives, especially in undergraduate medical education and competences and intrastable professional activities, or EPAS, especially in postgraduate medical education. Last, we have the outcomes can also be narrow, identifying specific skills, attitudes, and abilities of the session level, what we usually call objectives. And we have the outcomes are also part of the alignment of the entire learning experience. We need to connect the outcomes, activities, and assessment clearly and directly. Learning activities need to support the specific outcomes, and the assessment program should mirror those outcomes and learning activities.
So that concludes our discussion about Module 2, Target Setting. Hope you now formulate appropriate learning objectives and outcomes that are constructively aligned with national standards. Thank you so much.